Hey, what's going on guys? Today's challenge is viewer suggested and it's Oblivion, bound dagger only, conjuration and blade must be major skills. So this is my first ever Oblivion remastered challenge. So the feedback I've been given so far is that I should continue with the old Oblivion challenges as well as doing Oblivion challenges on the remastered version, which I personally think is a great idea. I never wanted to turn my back on the original Oblivion and it would be really interesting to see how these games compare with each other. So let's go ahead and discuss the rules for this challenge. So rule 1 being the obvious that I'm only allowed to use bound conjured daggers in combat. Rule 2 is that I must have blade and conjuration as two of my major skills. They're also kinda the only skills I'm actually allowed to use apart from the passive things like athletics, acrobatics and sneaking. Which brings me into rule 3, I'm not allowed to use any weapons, armor or magic whatsoever. And of course no use of console commands, cheats or exploits. Everyone clear and happy with the rules? No?
Let's just get through this.
So to start with, I created a Breton character for their natural resistance to magicka. I think that's really going to help, especially against Manka Cameron at the end.
Go ahead, try your magicka in here. Let's see you make those bars disappear.
Oh good, he's still a giant d*** then. It seems that Captain Uriel Picard's now been having remastered dreams about me. Now for the sewers I can't really do much of anything because I won't actually get the bound dagger until I leave the sewers. Captain Renault took a dive worthy of a professional football team. But with the way my analytics are shaping up, I might actually have to start calling it soccer. So my basic plan for the sewers was to just run past all of the enemies because, like I say, I can't actually do anything at the moment. I met up with the Emperor once again and picked the warrior as my star sign, giving me a 10-point bonus to strength and endurance. Then it was simply a case of just following the blades through the sewers.
Damn it! The gate is barred from the other side! A trap!
It's a trap!
So one of the beautiful things about the original Oblivion is just how buggy it was, and I've heard the word janky being thrown about as well. There have been times where I've waited up to 5 to 10 seconds before the assassin kills the Emperor. Holy shit, that was brutal. So I created a custom class with a combat specialization. I chose strength and endurance as my favorite attributes. So I chose blade and conjuration as two of my major skills as per the rules. And I just backfilled the rest with magic skills because it doesn't actually matter what I pick, I'm only going to use conjuration and blade. Then I realised that I've totally f***ed up Royal here because this is not the original Oblivion. This is remastered. All of your skills affect your level, so really I could have chosen sneak and acrobatics as two of my major skills. I did however choose athletics. And with all that out of the way, there's nothing left to do but get the hell out of the sewers. So the first thing I did upon leaving the sewers was sell all the junk I collected. I then used that gold to buy a conjured dagger spell. Then, as per instruction, I returned the Amulet of Kings to Joffrey, only to learn that the Emperor has been playing away and he has an illegitimate son somewhere. Then, like the obedient drone I am, I headed to Kvatch to look for him.
Kvatch is a smoking ruin. We're all that's left. Do you understand me? Everyone else is dead.
God, pull yourself together!
So at the minute I'm only level 1 and fighting the most basic of enemies, so I'm not really expecting too much of a challenge quite just yet. In Oblivion the enemies will scale as you level up, so you can potentially make yourself weaker, but for now I should be okay. And as per the rules I can't use a heal spell, however you will automatically regenerate health outside of combat in the remastered version. Also I can just use the wait command if I have to. So I decided that I would cut my way through all of the enemies inside the Oblivion Gate. In the past I've done challenges where you're a pacifist or there's certain things you can't do, and it is possible to just run through the Oblivion Gate without killing anything, but because this is about using a conjured dagger, I'm going to use it. Also, one of the problems I had with this challenge, and it is reoccurring, is that my conjured dagger will sometimes run out and I won't realise, at which point I will accidentally hit them with my fists. Then I have to reload and do the whole fight again. I mean, it's not a serious issue, but it is quite annoying when you're doing really well only to have everything gone to waste. After getting the sigil key, I cut my way through the rest of the tower and claimed the sigil stone. So now that I closed the Oblivion Gate, I was able to convince Martin to come with me back to Waynon Priory. It seems that the Mythic Dawn have attacked and are looking for the Amulet of Kings. But don't worry guys, because the Blades are the elite secret special forces of the Emperor and would never let such a thing happen.
They've taken it! The Amulet of Kings is gone! The enemy has defeated us at every turn!
You're joking about that, right?
Okay, so we need a plan, and that plan involves hiding Martin at Cloud Ruler Temple until we can actually come up with a plan. Joffrey then asked me to find Boris, the man who let the Emperor die under his care.
Listen, I'm going to get up in a minute and walk out of here. That guy in the corner behind me will follow me. You follow him.
Okay, look Boris, I came here for help on getting back the Amulet of Kings. I haven't really got time for a three-way in the back room of a seedy boarding house. But it turns out the man following Boris is actually a Mythic Dawn agent, who holds the first clue to getting back the Amulet of Kings. After taking the first book of Manka Cameron's commentaries to Tarmina at the Arcane University, I'm instructed to find a second one, so I had to blackmail a wood elf before we headed off into the sewers in order to look for the third. So the trudge through the sewers before the sponsor is pretty uneventful. It just has a few goblins and mud crabs, nothing we can't really handle, and Boris can actually just handle it all himself anyway. So my first target is normally Raven Cameron, as he is the strongest. We managed to take him out and I got the third book of the commentaries, before not realising that I didn't have a conjured dagger equipped, accidentally used my fists, and then was forced to reload. On my next attempt, I was immediately attacked by the Mythic Dawn guards, so I had to deal with them first, while I assumed Boris was dealing with Raven Cameron. I actually nearly died here and was forced to use a few potions. Also, I don't understand how this happened, although I like that it did, but he healed himself. After I'd finally dealt with both the guards, I could finally turn my attention to Raven Cameron. He was the only enemy I needed to actually kill to get the Book of Commentaries, and he showed me his method for sitting on a chair. And with all the pieces of the puzzle now together, I was able to make it to the super secret Dagon Shrine. Speaking to Harrow, you get two options. You can give him all of your possessions and get peaceful access to the shrine, or you can kill everything and just fight your way through.
When I walk the earth again, the faithful among you shall receive your reward.
Okay, didn't ask for your life story.
The weak shall be winnowed. The timid shall be cast down. The mighty shall tremble at my feet.
Yeah, okay, this guy. So I actually attempted to just slice my way through this room with my conjured dagger because everything has felt pretty easy so far. However, things did take a turn here and I got killed. The sheer number of enemies makes this extremely difficult, so I was going to have to think of a better plan. So I reloaded to when I first entered this room and immediately killed Harrow. No one really seemed to notice or care, which I don't feel like I could have got away with in the original Oblivion. And I know for an absolute certainty that I wouldn't have got away with this in the original because my sneak skill is less than 15. Also, I wondered why these guys were so easy to take out, but then I remembered that daggers actually do bonus sneak damage now. My sneak skill is at 7, and I just managed to take out 3 Mythic Dawn guards without being detected. Now, because I'm a Breton, I have a natural resistance to all the spells that are flying around, so that wasn't really too much of a concern. This guy caused me a lot of problems in my last Oblivion challenge, so this was so satisfying to beat him to death. And with the room clear, there's nothing left to do but get the Mysterium Xerxes, and what the f*** is he still doing here? Normally Manka Cameron opens a portal to paradise at the first sign of trouble. That's why you can't get back the Amulet of Kings. But here he is, stood before me.
What the hell are you? No! No! No!
So yes, he's not meant to be here, but since he is, I thought I'd try and kill him. Turns out after a few hits, you can't hit him anymore. I was able to sneak shot a few of the acolytes that were sleeping before using their bedroll to level up. So the leveling system in Oblivion has been changed, as well as what your attributes affect also have been changed. I put 5 points into strength and endurance and 2 points into intelligence. I should have picked agility. That's because daggers are now governed by your agility attribute rather than your strength attribute. I don't know if your strength does affect it still. Logic would dictate that it does. So I began to cut my way through the Dagon Shrine, taking out all enemies that I could. However, I accidentally used my fists and was forced to reload and try again. So while fighting some acolytes, I got pretty low on health and tried to use a potion. It's at this point that I realised that I forgot to collect my equipment from Harrow's corpse. So I headed back and collected all of my equipment before getting the hell out of there. The next immediate threat on the list is to deal with some spies that are located just outside of Cloud Ruler Temple. So Gerald died very easily and I was able to get the Mythic Dawn plans to attack Bruma. However, the second spy took a lot more killing. I always assumed that both spies were around the same level, but the second one did seem a lot harder. That being said, I didn't have to use any potions or anything. But this one was definitely a lot more tanky and actually harder than the one I fought in the original. I don't know if it's because I leveled up, it probably is. But with that out of the way, the next job on my list is to go on a scavenger hunt across Cyrodiil, looking for items for a magic ritual to open a portal to paradise. I pickpocketed some glow dust from one of the merchants inside the Imperial City. I then dropped the glow dust out of sight. I then had to pay a fine for stealing said glow dust before returning to pick it up and heading to the Azura Shrine. So the easiest Daedric artifact that can be acquired is the Azura Star, as you only need to be level 2 to do this. So the vampires gave me a lot of trouble. Some of them are quite overpowered for my current level. I'm in a tight, dark, confined area with nowhere to run, so my strategy had to be to just hit them as hard as I can and hope I don't die. It actually took well over a minute just to kill the first vampire, and I got really lucky that I didn't draw the attention of the rest of them, otherwise I would not have stood a chance. And then even after I killed the first vampire, I had to return to the start of the cave and wait for my health to regenerate. This is not something I'm used to as a vanilla Oblivion player. I got absolutely f***ing destroyed against the next vampire. Attempt number 2 went a little bit better. I had to use some potions, but I still got killed. I then decided that it might be a better idea to try and take out the weaker vampire first, and then save so that I would only be dealing with one vampire at a time. But this didn't make him any easier. He is extremely powerful, and I got killed yet again. But I did feel like I was actually getting somewhere, so I tried again, but I still got killed. So it seemed like the only way to do this was to just stand and confront him, hit him as much as possible, then use some potions, hit him again until I was nearly dead, and then use some more potions. This was a giant waste of potions, as I don't really have a lot of money to buy some more right now. And if I'm struggling to deal with basic vampires, I don't want to know what Manka Cameron's gonna be like. The next vampire was also a heavy armor clad orc. However, he did seem to be doing less damage to me, although I was still doing the same damage to him. I was once again forced to use a lot of potions, but this fight went a lot better, and I actually beat him on my first attempt. And with that, there was only one more weak vampire to kill, before returning to Azura and getting the Azura Star. So nothing says Hero of Cyrodiil like a spot of grave robbing. It seems that's going to be my next task, but before that, I first have to close an Oblivion gate that's opened outside of Bruma, so that the Bruma Guard know how to do it in future. Now, I never really have a lot to say about this gate because I have Captain Bird with me, who is an absolute tank. He is also an invincible ally, so it's near enough impossible to fail this quest. All you really have to do is lead him up to the Sigil Tower and show him how to get the Sigil Stone to close the Oblivion gates. I then returned to the Imperial City and sold everything that I collected so far. I also slept to level up, where I increased my strength, endurance and intelligence, once again neglecting agility. I then headed back to Cloud Ruler Temple to talk to Joffrey about... wait, what the f***? Okay, let me just quickly explain something here. These two stones are not meant to be here. On the left, we have the Great Welkynd Stone, something I'm supposed to get during a quest later on. And on the right, we have the Great Sigil Stone, again, something I'm supposed to get later on. You know what? F*** it, the game's just come out, there's gonna be bugs. My job now is to recover the armor of Tiber Septim from an ancient tomb called Sankator. Before this, however, I went to buy as many potions as I could, as I felt I was desperately going to need them. So Ghosts in Oblivion can only be affected by silver or Daedric weaponry as well as enchanted weaponry. I'm not exactly sure what criteria a conjured dagger would actually fit, either Daedric or magic. Either way I can hit them, and that is going to be really handy because I never kill the ghosts in these challenges. So in order to get the armor of Tiber Septim, I first have to deal with the 4 undead blades that will then unlock the way to the armor. I normally have to kill the first blade with an arrow trap, but I was able to take him out. The second blade did a dangerous amount of damage to me and very nearly killed me. I did want to get away with this without using potions, and thankfully I was able to. However, this fight was not actually easy. The fight against the third undead blade went pretty much the same way, although I kind of suspected they were getting ever so slightly harder. I've always known the undead blades to be absolute juggernauts, so I am wondering if maybe the level scaling has changed slightly. The last skeletal blade seemed to go down a lot easier than his predecessors, and at long last I was able to get the armor of Tiber Septim. Having returned the armour of Tiber Septim to Martin, the next thing on my list was a great Welkynd stone. First, however, it was time to level up again. This time I actually put points into agility. So I would need to acquire a great Welkynd stone from an Ayleid tomb called Welkynd. Now this tomb is filled with goblins and zombies and skeletons, and they all seem to want to kill each other. And I was only too happy to let them. Now Welkynd is quite maze-like, as there are certain doors that you can't go through, certain gates that will need certain switches, and zombies are normally quite formidable, but I seem to be having a little problem with them here. Normally the biggest issue that I have is healing, but because you automatically heal, that problem kind of just gets pushed to the side. Now, the Great Welkynd Stone is protected by the King of Welkynd, a powerful lich with a very strong staff. There are also a few zombie guardians. No zombie guardians. That's strange. So I think I might actually have been too quick for the King of Welkynd here, because he didn't get to use his staff at all, and I was able to just run in and finish him off without him really doing anything to me. I wanted to go back just to make sure there weren't any zombie guardians chasing me, and sure as hell I actually found them. I think in future, if I do Oblivion Remastered, I'm going to do it on Master difficulty, because this all feels extremely easy. I don't know what they did with the difficulty, but they've done something. Like, I'm not even wearing armor and I'm taking very little damage, and zombie guardians are normally absolute tanks. So I nearly acquired all of the items for Martin's Satanic Ritual. The last thing we needed was a Great Sigil Stone. Now in order to get this, we would have to let them open a great gate outside of Bruma so that I could go in and close it. So this is actually a timed mission. You have like 15 minutes to get through here and grab the Great Sigil Stone, otherwise you will just fail the mission altogether and have to try again. To that end, fighting generally isn't encouraged, it's just a case of get through here as quick as you can, although you will more than likely have to take out some enemies along the way. I actually had a lot of trouble dealing with one of the Dremora and a few scamps inside of one of the towers, but thankfully there is a blood fountain. Certainly wouldn't recommend this place as a holiday destination though. And while yes, I did do my fair share of fighting and killing inside of here, the main idea is to just get the Sigil Stone as quick as possible. Once I'd acquired the Sigil Stone, I slept to level up again, increasing my strength, endurance and agility. I sold all of the junk that I had and bought as many potions as I could afford before entering Manka Cameron's Paradise. So Paradise itself is actually just that, it looks beautiful. There's normally the odd scamp or clan fear knocking around, but apart from that it's pretty straightforward. I met up with Cathatet, who looks suspiciously like Darth Maul. You get the option here whether to serve him or to just kill him and take the bands of the Chosen. I told him that I was going to serve him, and then when he was walking away I sneak shot at him. So I did try to just outright fight him one time, but he was just far too powerful, so I figured that if I could sneak shot him, that would give me a good head start. I was unfortunately forced to use a few potions here, which I was not happy about because I really wanted to keep all of them for Manka Cameron. After I killed Cathatet and took the bands of the Chosen, I started getting chased by a clan fear. Now, since I can't heal, and I didn't want to waste any more potions, I swam out as far as I could and let my health regenerate. I met a Mythic Dawn defector by the name of Eldermill who seemed very keen on me killing Manca Cameron. He gave me passage across a lake of fire, and even took off the bands of the Chosen for me, allowing me access to Manca Cameron. I came across the odd Scamp, Clanfear, and even Flame Atronach in here, but they weren't really too much trouble, especially since I have Eldermill to help me. So my plan for dealing with Manca Cameron was to run in hard and fast and hit this f***er with everything I've got, not relenting, not stopping, and not giving his children a chance to help. Now, a serious issue I had here is that eventually my bound dagger would run out, and that would give him a chance to heal. It also would give his children enough time to get involved in the fight, which was very problematic. I wanted a quick and clean kill, and I just wasn't going to get it because my bound dagger kept running out of charge. Eventually I started taking enough damage that I had to use potions. And sure enough, while I was trying to regain my composure, he'd healed himself, so it was back to smacking him again as hard as I could. Then more potions, then more combat. The fact that I was a Breton here really helped me with my magicka resistance because he would have absolutely wrecked me otherwise. And with Manca Cameron defeated and the Amulet of Kings restored to its rightful owner, there was nothing left to do but get Martin to the Temple of the One and light the dragonfires.
I do what I must do. I cannot stay to rebuild Tamriel. That task falls to others. But now I must go.
My planet needs me.
And finally beating the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion Remastered, using only a conjured dagger. So, what can I say about this challenge? Well, first of all, I'd just like to thank you so much for the suggestion. It was a really fun idea, and I really enjoyed playing it for the first time on Oblivion Remastered. I feel like this would have been a lot harder if I played it on the original Oblivion, due to not being able to naturally regenerate health. But for the thousands of hours I've spent in Oblivion, I don't actually use conjured weaponry, so this was a really nice change. Also, the new conjured gear looks really, really cool. But I am curious to hear what you guys think about the remaster. I imagine that this remake is quite polarizing. Oh, also at the time of completing this, only 0.74% of people had yet finished this game, which is more than likely the only time I'll ever be in the top 1% of anything. I'd also like to say a huge thank you for all of your support and feedback. It really does help me with making these videos, and you guys taught me the correct way to say mysticism, which actually turned out to be a happy accident because the algorithm really liked all the feedback from that. And finally guys, I'd just like to say thank you so much for watching today. Please like, subscribe and all that good stuff. Leave any comments if you do have any, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.